All right. So I read a book a week. I've been doing that since summer. So I'm going to give a few tips that'll help you out. The number one thing, which this is just the formula for consistency in general, is you got to put a time every day to do it. So what works for me, I'm not saying this is the end, this is what you got to do, but what works for me is the morning, okay? I know some people are morning people, which is fine, but I do believe that doing hard things first makes the rest of the day easy. So for example, if you got something you want to implement into your routine, I think it's important to do it before all the BS happens. Like you go to work, you get tired, you get busy at the end of the day. I just feel like you can't count on yourself to do things by 5 p.m. when you're done working, okay? So I think the morning works really, really well. Now, you might have to wake up 30 minutes earlier, all right? And I say 30 minutes because I think when you first start out, it's fine to read a little bit shorter. So you can start with 10 minutes, whatever. But what really makes reading enjoyable is when you get in the flow. So point number 2 is realize that it takes 5 to 10 minutes to actually get into the flow of reading. It's not just, you know how to read, you pick the book up, you love it immediately. No. Everyone, even if you're deep into the book, it takes your brain a little bit to lock in, okay? So point number 2, just be in a quiet place and let yourself fall into the book. And you don't want distractions. Don't try to do too many things at once. Just commit to the book and let yourself get lost in it. Number 3 is you got to have the right mindset about it. And I'll explain. So you don't want to feel a sense of obligation to read. All right, and in the back of your head, we know we want to implement reading, but you don't want to feel like it's a homework assignment, because it's not. And what you need to do is read what you love until you love to read. So your first book needs to be something you know will interest you. It needs to be easy to read. It needs to be something relevant, whatever. It needs to be something you know you're going to be able to pick up and at least lock into for 10 to 15 minutes at a time. So the way I like to do this is sometimes I don't feel like reading, all right? The way I like to get around that is in the morning, I'll tell myself, it's hard to explain, but I kind of like smile and try to get a good feeling in my head. I'm like, oh, I get to read. Like, I'm going to read, not I got to read. It's say it to yourself 5 times. I'm going to read. I get to read. All right. I feel like a geek saying that, but that legit is kind of what I do to get in the right headspace. Because again, you don't want that obligation towards the books. You want to feel like it's something you want to do. So that is point number 3, remove the obligation. And you say to yourself, I'm going to read, all right? A little bit of smile. You need to feel something good before you get into it. Point number 4 would be, what do you read? So if you watch my channel, you found this video, you're probably in the business atmosphere. I don't know if I have the book with me, but I just got this book. I read it in literally a day because it was so good. It's also super easy to read. It's called the Almanac of Naval Ravikant. So pretty popular book, but if you're just getting into reading, you probably haven't read it. So it covers wealth. He's an angel investor. He's worth $65 million. It covers wealth, and it talks about happiness, which the chapter on happiness, his outlook is really insane. And before I thought it was all go, 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 but I'm not going to spoil it. The Almanac of Naval Ravikant forward by Tim Ferriss. Really awesome. He has a ton of book recommendations in there as well. I love that book. The other book that I reference all the time, it was a book that actually got me into reading. It's called Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy. If you're into business stuff, you might have seen Brian Tracy. You might not know it, but he's a sales guy. And Eat That Frog is about doing the hard thing first. And I look at that book all the time, and it just reminds me that it feels better to do the thing that you really don't want to do. So easy choices, hard life, hard choices, easy life. You know? So you got to do the hard things first. I'm just going to recommend those 2 books if you are into business, into anything. I think anyone should read those books, so I'm going to keep it broad, all right? And then some other bonus tips is, I would say, I like earplugs. I've been experimenting with those. If you are not in a super quiet space and it's hard for you to focus, earplugs, and a bonus to that would be you put the earplugs in and then you put ear protection over the earplugs. Literally no noise. You can do that for work productivity stuff as well. That's an awesome trick. It gets me zoned in. Like, you don't have any outside inputs. It's all just your thoughts up here going straight into the activity you're doing. Works especially good for reading. Other thing I like to do is, especially if I'm reading and trying to really get something out of the book, if it's educational, I highlight the shit out of it. Because what I end up doing is I reference the book all the time. I go back and I look at those little parts and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. I legit look at those 2 books I mentioned. I look at those every day and I just pull from them. And it's just, we need to be reminded more than we need to be taught. So that's how you really squeeze the lemon with a book and get the most out of it. So that's a huge tip. Highlight. So just to laundry list what I went over, the first thing I think I said was set a time. That's the most important thing overall. That's the fundamental of habit. Pick a time, carve it out, and do it every day. Number 2 is let yourself get into the flow of reading, okay? You just realize it's gonna take 5 to 10 minutes and just get through those and you're gonna fall into the flow of it. 3, make sure you're reading what you wanna read. Don't feel that obligation. Say to yourself, I'm gonna read. And then lastly, pick a good book. I put some recommendations and just be in a quiet place. Hope this was valuable. 2025, start reading some books. Even if you don't read a book a week, imagine the knowledge you'll have even after really soaking up one book and implementing it. Hope that was helpful. My name's Liam. Get going. Love you guys.